reports that Gaza's Christians are serving their community. And Jesus is appearing to people in dreams.
Imagine hearing whispers across the world. Jesus appeared in Gaza. At first, it sounds impossible. Gaza is one of the most war-torn, grief-filled places on earth, a land scarred by conflict, politics, and generations of suffering. Yet in the middle of the rubble, the fear, and the hopelessness, a shocking story has emerged. Hundreds of people in Gaza claim they have seen Jesus Christ in dreams and visions, and not just a handful of people scattered here and there. Entire groups describe the same vision on the same night, waking up in awe, in tears, and in joy. Some embraced each other, stunned that they had all experienced the very same thing. But here's the bigger question. Could a place known only for division and bloodshed suddenly become the stage for one of the most extraordinary revivals of modern times? And if so, why Gaza? Why now? For centuries, the Middle East has been the backdrop of faith, prophecy, and divine encounters. But in recent years, it's also been a region crushed by despair, where faith often collides with survival. In that context, hearing that Jesus appeared in Gaza feels not only miraculous, but almost unthinkable. This isn't Rome, this isn't Jerusalem, it's Gaza, a strip of land many only associate with war headlines. And yet, reports are spreading that Jesus is meeting people there personally, in dreams and visions, and leading them to embrace him despite overwhelming risks.
Gave their heart to Jesus in one lump sum because the Lord appeared to them in visions and dreams. And they were hugging each other. And
this video is about much more than sensational headlines. It's about hope breaking into one of the darkest corners of the world. It's about ordinary people facing war and despair, and suddenly encountering a light that changes everything. And it's about what that means for all of us watching from afar. Because if Jesus can appear in Gaza, maybe he can appear in the most broken places of our own lives too. Throughout history, reports of divine visions have surfaced at the most unexpected times. During the Roman Empire, persecuted Christians claimed visions of Christ strengthened them before martyrdom. In modern times, countless Muslims have shared stories of meeting Jesus in dreams, often in places where no church or Bible was accessible. These stories carry striking similarities: the same figure, the same overwhelming sense of peace, and the same transformative decision to follow him. Gaza may simply be the latest chapter in this ongoing story, but let's be clear, this isn't about abstract theology. These are flesh and blood people, fathers, mothers, teenagers, living in rubble, facing hunger, and fearing for their lives every day. For them, these visions aren't intellectual debates, they're lifelines of hope. And when entire groups testify that they saw the same figure of Christ on the same night, it's not just a personal dream, it becomes a community-shaking event. No wonder so many are turning to faith, even when doing so could cost them everything. So what should we make of it? Are these visions the product of collective trauma and imagination? Or are they genuine encounters with the divine? We'll explore both perspectives in this video, but either way, the fact remains, something profound is stirring in Gaza. And whether you're a believer, a skeptic, or simply curious, this story matters. Because it challenges all of us to ask, what would it take for you to believe? And if such a miracle could happen in Gaza, what could happen in your life? Right now, today, before we dive deeper into this breathtaking story, make sure to stay with us until the end. You'll hear not only the testimonies themselves, but also the historical background of faith in Gaza, the risks these new believers face, and what this revival could mean for the rest of the world. And trust me, you don't want to miss the real-life examples we'll uncover that make this story far more than rumor. It's a wake-up call for anyone who has ever wondered whether faith can survive in the darkest places. Now, let's step into Gaza, not through the lens of politics or war reporting, but through the eyes of those who claim they've met Jesus in the middle of despair. Their voices tell us something powerful, something unsettling, and maybe, just maybe, something miraculous. When you hear the word Gaza, what images come to mind? For most of us, it's smoke, rubble, and news headlines of endless conflict. But within that same place, stories are surfacing that sound like something out of the book of Acts. People meeting Jesus through visions and dreams, and whole groups embracing faith overnight. Let's pause and dig deeper into what's happening, because the testimonies are as surprising as they are powerful. Take one story, For example, reports describe around 200 people who all experienced the same vision of Christ on the very same night. Imagine waking up the next morning, cautiously sharing what you saw, only to find that every person around you had the same dream. That's exactly what happened. These individuals, men, women, even children, embraced each other in tears, realizing they had each encountered Jesus personally. For them, it wasn't an idea. It wasn't theology. It was a shared miracle that rewrote their lives in a single moment. But this isn't the first time such accounts have emerged from the Middle East, in places where access to churches and Bibles is severely restricted. Testimonies of Jesus appearing in dreams have become a common thread. Scholars and missionaries have documented hundreds of such stories over the last few decades. One striking case comes from a man in Saudi Arabia who had never seen a Bible. He dreamed of a man in white telling him, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Months later, when he stumbled upon a copy of the New Testament, he recognized the words exactly as he had heard them in the dream. The same pattern seems to be unfolding now in Gaza, but on a scale that's drawing global attention. Of course, critics argue that in times of trauma, people's minds can create visions to cope with suffering, and psychology does support that stress, and fear can trigger vivid dreams. But here's the twist. How do you explain identical visions shared by entire groups, with details matching across different people who never compared notes beforehand? That's not just coincidence. That's something that demands attention. Let's also not forget Gaza's history. While today it's predominantly Muslim, Gaza was once home to thriving Christian communities. Archaeologists have uncovered Byzantine-era churches in the region, proof that Christianity has deep roots there. Over centuries, wars and politics reduced that presence to a tiny minority. Yet even now, Gaza has a small but resilient Christian population, often serving quietly in schools, hospitals, and relief work. So in a sense, these modern testimonies aren't random. They echo a forgotten heritage of faith that once flourished in the same soil. Another detail worth noting is the risk these new believers face. In Gaza, converting to Christianity isn't like switching denominations in the West. It can mean being rejected by family, facing hostility, or even risking your life. And yet, despite the danger, many are pressing forward. That alone is remarkable. Faith is easy in safe spaces. It's costly in places like Gaza. And the fact that people are embracing it under such circumstances adds weight to their testimonies. Here's a mid-script hook for you to think about. Why would people risk everything for a dream, unless they were convinced it was more than a dream? This is where the story shifts from being just news to something deeply human. We're talking about fathers who have to decide whether to openly confess their new faith, knowing it could jeopardize their safety. Mothers who quietly whisper prayers at night, grateful for an encounter that gave them courage to endure another day. Teenagers who, despite peer pressure, dare to say they saw Christ. These aren't distant headlines. These are real people making real choices. And what's even more moving is how these new believers are responding. Reports say they aren't retreating into private faith alone. They're serving their neighbors, sharing food, offering comfort, living differently. And that's exactly what shocked observers. Instead of hiding, many are acting like the earliest Christians described in the book of Acts, supporting one another and becoming a light in the darkest of places. Think about it. We often debate whether miracles still happen today. But here is a case where hundreds of testimonies line up. History provides context, and the cost of belief is extraordinarily high. That combination makes this story hard to dismiss. No matter what side of the faith spectrum you're on, the deeper question is, why Gaza, and why now? Some suggest that in times of great suffering, people are more open to spiritual experiences. Others argue that God chooses the most unlikely places to reveal himself, precisely to remind us that no place is too far gone. And maybe both are true. What's clear is that this story isn't just about Gaza. It's about the possibility that hope can break into any situation, even the ones we will be. We've walked through the rubble-strewn streets of Gaza in this story, not with cameras or politicians, but through the voices of people who claim to have seen Jesus. Their testimonies push us to wrestle with difficult but powerful questions. Could these visions be real? Could they represent something bigger happening in one of the most hopeless corners of the earth? Or, at the very least, could they reveal that faith still has the power to thrive under impossible circumstances? One thing is undeniable: the impact. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, the ripple effect is real. Families that once lived in despair now speak with hope. Communities torn apart by conflict are finding reasons to serve each other. And in a place where survival often drowns out every other thought, people are daring to imagine a different future. That alone should make us stop and pay attention. And here's the deeper challenge for us watching from the outside. What do we do with this story? It's easy to dismiss it as rumor. It's easy to call it a product of stress or imagination. But it's much harder to ignore the courage of people who risk everything to stand by their new faith. That kind of boldness forces us to ask ourselves, what do I really believe in strongly enough to risk something for? This is where Gaza becomes more than geography. It becomes a metaphor for all of us. We all have our Gaza, a place in our lives that feels hopeless, broken, or beyond redemption. Maybe for you it's a fractured relationship, a secret addiction, or a season of overwhelming doubt. And maybe, like Gaza, you've told yourself nothing good can come out of that part of your life. But here's the point. If Jesus can appear in the middle of bombs, fear, and rubble, then he can certainly show up in the middle of your struggles too. Think about it. The people in Gaza didn't build cathedrals or host crusades. They didn't even have the freedom to openly explore Christianity. And yet, something broke through anyway. That means the same is possible for you. You don't have to have everything figured out. You don't have to fix your own life first. Sometimes, the miracle comes uninvited, like light shining through a crack in the darkness. And perhaps the most striking lesson of all is this. Hope is contagious. When one person chooses to believe, it encourages others. When one family decides to serve instead of despair, their neighbors notice. And when whole groups wake up with the same vision, entire communities begin to shift. Faith doesn't just change individuals, it changes the atmosphere around them. That's what we see in Gaza, and that's what could happen anywhere. So, as we close, let me leave you with two questions. First, what's your Gaza? What part of your life feels like rubble, where hope seems impossible? Second, what would it mean for you if light broke into that place? You don't have to answer right now, but don't let those questions go. Sit with them, reflect on them, because sometimes, simply being willing to ask the question is the first step toward the miracle. If you've made it this far in the video, it probably means you're curious, maybe even stirred by what you've heard. Don't ignore that. Share in the comments what you think about these reports from Gaza. Do you believe these visions could be real, or do you think there's something else? More importantly, have you ever had an experience that felt too extraordinary to explain? We'd love to hear your story, because whether you're a skeptic or a believer, your voice matters in this conversation. And if you found this story thought-provoking, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with a friend who needs hope. Because let's be honest, we all know someone who feels like they're living in their own Gaza right now. And maybe, just maybe, hearing that light can break through even there will be exactly what they need. History shows us that revivals rarely start in palaces or safe suburbs. They usually begin in broken places, among ordinary people, desperate for hope. That's what makes Gaza such a powerful reminder. In the very soil of despair, seeds of faith are being planted. And who knows, maybe the miracle of Gaza is not only for Gaza. It might be a spark meant to spread far beyond. So, stay watchful, stay open, because if light can shine in Gaza, it can shine anywhere, even here, even now, even in you.